Hi everyone. When we talk next about video game publishing, I would like to distinguish that from book and music publishing. What we just talked about, the kind of the history of publishing and how agents work and so on, is very typical of how book and music publishing work. This is because these two art forms grew up together in the early days of publishing, and they really did work very similarly. When we move next to video game publishing, you might want to think of that as a separate category. It has its own rules, it has its own industry standards, and so on. Likewise, we'll talk after that about film and television. Film and television can be thought of as a third category. It also has its own rules, its own customs, industry standards, and so on. So once again, think of it in terms of books and music, which we've briefly talked about now. They kind of work the same way. Video game publishing, as the second category, has its own rules. And then in the third category is film and television. Okay, so let's take a look at video game publishing. Here, the money scale is very, very different. If a publishing house wanted to release a book or music, their cost is going to be either in the thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars for an average campaign. And that includes marketing, distribution, production, and so on. When we talk about video game publishing, however, and here I'm specifically talking about hardcore platform games, the franchise style games, Grand Theft Auto, Medal of Honor, Halo, for example. These types of games typically cost in the millions of dollars to create and to distribute. They could be 20 or 30 million dollars. They could require a team of 50 to 100 people. They could take years to put together. So the scope is very, very different, very, very much bigger than, let's say, a single author or composer who can sit down, write the manuscript for the book or the music, in many cases alone, maybe with the help of someone else. And as I say, the project can be released for thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because of these differences, this is why video game publishing has its own rules and its own way of doing things. First difference is, if you have an idea for a video game, you're not going to look for an agent to pitch the idea to a publishing house. A game publisher would like to see actually a playable demo. And the playable demo on that level or scale will typically require a team of developers to put together. A lot of the big game publishers have their own in-house development teams that will pitch ideas and work them into full-blown pitches all the time. But occasionally you'll find an independent development company doing this. They'll put in a couple $100,000 of money, the efforts of 20 to 50 people, a couple of years to produce a playable demo. It might have one, two, possibly three working playable levels of this game, as well as the storyboards, the artwork, everything necessary to bring it to a game publisher for a full-blown pitch. If the publisher is interested, and they then might either license the content, they may buy it, they may pay the developer to complete it. More typically, if they're really, really interested, they'll want to just buy everything. They'll buy it up from the developer, take the content, and then bring it to their own in-house development team and have them finish everything, and then they'll release it. So the bottom line, if I have an idea for a video game, I can't just call EA Games, for example, and say, hey, listen to my new idea, it's really awesome. I would have to actually speak with a development team, see if they're interested in coming up with that initial investment and creating the full-blown pitch, including, as I say, the playable demo. Okay, so developers, as I say, can range in size from an individual to, in some cases, a fairly large corporation. Rovio, for example, is an indie game publisher out of Scandinavia. You might have heard of one of their games. It's called Angry Birds. Um, they've got a team of about 50, sometimes 100 people working on projects. So, as I say, mainstream games, expensive, usually 20 to 50 million dollars. Typically, it's the publisher who funds these. What you want to do is think of this in terms of the developer on the one hand that is doing the creative work, they actually make the game. They come up with the concept for the game. They do the initial artwork for the game, the rendering of the game, the coding of the game, the testing of the game, and then they eventually actually pitch it to the game publisher. As far as the game publisher, what do? You want to think business. The game publisher will finance the completion of the game. They'll be in charge of marketing the game, advertising the game, promoting the game, distributing the game. They'll also have customer service, sales, support, and so on. So that's kind of the easy way to keep the two straight. What do developers do? What do publishers do? There's a process for video game publishing. The pre-production phase, this is usually where the developer is pitching the game to the publisher. They have, I mentioned before, we've got the query letter where I'm pitching an idea for books and music. We call it a pitch letter if it's an idea for film or TV. The same thing, only here now we call it a concept paper, in which they identify the key points of the game, what the game is like, the genre of it, and so on. If the developers are invited to a pitch meeting with the publisher, then they're actually going to elaborate upon everything with a presentation treatment that they would pass out to the publishers at the meeting. It gives more information about the game. And then finally, if investor financing is sought or the publishers are really interested in green lighting the project, meaning buying it, then they'll ask the developers to provide a thing called a game design document, or a GDD. The game design document is very elaborate. It has all the treatment material in it. Plus, it's the blueprint of the game. Everything you'd want to know about the game is in that document, including the code itself. If the publisher is interested, they will then, take over financing the completion of the game, as I say, and will move then into the production part. This is what I mentioned before about the roles of publishers, them handling the business side with financing the game, marketing it, promoting it, advertising it, distributing it, and so forth. And developers, as I mentioned, are responsible for creating the game, testing it, coding it, rendering it, making it essentially. Here's a spotlight if you actually want to make a game and showcase it on Steam, where it might be picked up by a publisher. It's an interesting video. You might want to watch that. Okay, so I think that covers everything about games in a very quick summary way. Please read the text. Please read the individual chapter slides for more detail, but that'll get you started. On the film and television side, it's really key to have a pitch meeting where you'll be telling the story of what your film or TV show is about to executive producers. During your pitch meeting, you'll want to be handing out a treatment to these people. And if they're interested, they may either want to buy out your work, maybe license it from you, or more likely option the work. Meaning they got a number of things they have to check out before they can buy it. Does it test well with marketing? Are there any legal conflicts of interest going on? Can they get the financing to produce it? And so on. So while they're finding out all those things, they don't want you to go away though. They may give you an option, which is a bit of money to reserve the decision while they find out. When that term is over, they'll either then greenlight the project and give you more money to buy it out from you, or they may say, we're sorry, we can't use it, we've got something like that in development, or there's a conflict, or it doesn't test well, or whatever, in which case any money they gave you to hold the deal open with the option you get to keep. Okay. A couple types of treatments and couple types of pitches. We've got number one, the teaser pitch. Sometimes it's called an elevator pitch. It's just a very short 2 or 3 sentence opener. It's kind of like the sizzle opener in the query letter or the pitch letter that captures their attention. When you actually go to the pitch meeting, you'll be presenting about your idea for your film or television with a thing called a story pitch. This is where you tell the story or the plot of the film or the TV show from start to finish. Usually you should be able to do that in about 10 or 20 minutes during the course of the meeting. There's also 2 types of treatments out there, what we call the presentation treatment. You would typically pass that out at your pitch meeting, in which it summarizes your characters, your scenes, your settings, and the different acts in either the film or the different episodes in the television show. If you're seeking investor financing or a much larger deal, then something called an original draft treatment, it's also called a prospectus, is prepared, in which not only is the presentation treatment included in that, it may also include a business plan and also a contract for investors to subscribe to the film. In other words, purchase an ownership in the project. So for pitch meetings, expect to present for about 10 to 20 minutes. You'll probably have to sign submission guidelines. You'll want to rehearse, you'll want to be courteous and professional, and always think of this as a sales meeting. You're trying to sell the idea. So you want to have that kind of enthusiasm and so on. And you want to be prepared. They may still have to take a pass on it, meaning they don't want it, they're not interested. Some reasons for that, again, they might have something like that already in development, or they may not be able to get the financing for it, or it doesn't test well with marketing. Likely today, they'll, believe it or not, they may ask you to sign a non-compete and an NDA before you walk in. That's more to protect themselves. They're more scared of you stealing their ideas than you may be of them stealing yours. And they may ask you to tell them what is the pitch before you even go in, to make sure they don't have anything like that already in development, or they haven't bought anything like it. Here are some videos. Some are funny, some are what not to do at a pitch meeting or what to do at a pitch meeting, and one is Stephen J. Cannell giving some insider tips about pitching. So if you haven't already done so, folks, I ask you for this week, please read chapters 1 through 10, the document how this course works, take a look at the course outline or your course calendar, pick your piece of creative content for your query letter. I've got, how-to videos and all that on the platform. And then if you can, go to the go-to session or watch the videos. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great week. I look forward to reading your query letters and finding out what your content is. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.